So on a recent live stream, which I'm trying to have every Tuesday and Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, by the by, asked me what repaint do I wish Hasbro had done, and whenever someone asks that, I always default to the Voyager Cybertron Starscream in Skywarp colors. It's a great mold, and I think it would have looked beautiful in the black and purple. Well, that never happened outside of a little dinky Legends toy, but it did remind me of the closest we got on an actual Transformer scale, and that was the fall of Cybertron Skywarp from the Generations line. Based on the video game, you can see it is something like the Cybertron Starscream. That one was based on the War Within Starscream, which was based on the G1 Tetrajet. And that's pretty much what we have here. Something trying to come somewhere in between that triangle-shaped jet that we saw in episode 1 of the Transformers and the more traditional-looking jet. And I will say it's something of a nice mix. It's a little bit odd because there's some details that are a little bit non-traditional, like the inverted wings here. But for the most part, I like what they did here. Now you can see, unlike your standard Skywarp, the colors are kind of an even mix between purple, black, and gray. There isn't any one predominant in this mode. I will admit, I really would have preferred more black. I think the black jet look works really well for Skywarp with the purple highlights. So I'm kind of wishing some of that gray was black instead, just to make the vehicle mode look a little bit more solid. But it's still okay for what it is, though. It's a really nice shade of purple, though you can see a little bit of difference between where it's molded and where it's painted. A little bit of color mismatching going on. And for detail paint, you can see some semblance of traditional look, like some striping on the wing. But then you also have the fall of Cybertron Energon highlights running through the side here on the cockpit, in the intakes, as well as a little bit here on top. Just a little bit of Tron glow lines for you. And I do like little touches like that on these Fall of Cybertron figures. Now, for the most part, it's perfectly fine. Like, a little bit bulky in the back, but hey, it's a space jet, so it doesn't really have to worry about aerodynamics, because there's no aero part in space. I do like how what will become the feet are actually these gigantic thruster engines in the back. I like a little bit of molding to make that a little bit more concrete. So that's really cool. And you can also see some translucent orange in the cockpit. I don't know what, like, you can see a visible cockpit seat and a console inside. I don't know why, because it's a space jet and they haven't even heard of a human yet. I don't know, maybe a Minicon goes in there. I don't know. I have no idea at this point. But it's not a bad-looking jet mode. If we want to arm it a little bit more, he does come with accessories, as Fall of Cybertron figures tended to come with very large accessories in the form of these twin chain guns, which actually do have a little bit of gearing, so they do spin around, which is kind of cool. Now, the nice thing about these is multiple ways of attaching them. You can attach them via the leg peg on the side, and that underslings it under the wing like so. You can also peg it into the hole under the wing, which is a more traditional mounting point for any seeker weapon, and it looks like so. Pretty much the same, a little bit different. The savvy, however, will actually know that you can combine these and then pluck the tail fin off. That exposes two holes for those two pegs, which can attach to there and give you a much more heavily armed spaceship, which I like heavily armed spaceships. And when connected, the gearing actually works together, which is a subtle bit of gimmick. Not a bit, that's the kind of gimmick I prefer. It's out of the way, it's still a nice little action feature, and it doesn't really hurt the toy in any way as an action figure. So, all good there. It's a neat little hidden feature that I don't think they documented on any version of this figure, which is kind of strange. Ah well, let's get this thing into robot mode. One thing about the toys in Fall of Cybertron, pretty efficient. Like, they're kind of simplified and kind of shrunken down compared to Generations figures before them, but there's a cleanness to how they transform that I quite enjoy. As you can see, we're about halfway done already. You know, it's just enough to keep it interesting, while at the same time just having a nice fluid function to it. You know, it feels correct. Hang on a second. We gotta fold this up and then fold that down. All right. Right. There's a weird bit of double hinging here, just in case it was out of frame, where we had to go like that in order to get everything lined up correctly. And see, we twist all of this around, twist all of that around, fold down, fold. Well, I'll get out of the way to get the head around, and then we can fold down. And that is going to be our Skywarp in robot mode, looking much more like a traditional Seeker here, in spite of his Cybertronian stylings. Because, of course, you know, the robot always has to kind of resemble the robot that we're all more familiar with. And here the colors, I think, balance out a little bit better, as we've hidden away some of the purple, and the gray, or the black, has a little bit more presence here. Of course, we take a look at the head, and big shock, it looks like a Starscream head, because of course it's all Starscream in all these molds. It's kind of hard to actually get some light in because of these pieces are kind of getting in the way, but you can see it's pretty much your standard Seeker head. Nothing really bad or good about it. It's a Seeker head with some orange light piping, which is a little bit dulled out. So once again, I'm not a fan of light piping. Now, proportionally, he's not bad. He's very heavy in the legs, and you'll notice he's a little bit gorilla-armed because his fists are reaching his knees. It's not terrible, but the more you stare at it, the weirder it gets. So it's a little unfortunate. You know, the proportions might have worked out a little bit better on this figure. Though I haven't seen the Fall of Cybertron model in a while, so for all I know, that's entirely accurate. A lot of the details here we've saw in the vehicle mode, but a few new things have come up. Now we see the legs that were the engines, fully molded, little lines going through just to give it some detail, and some extra paint just for the sake of giving it some color, just for the sake of breaking up the purple a little bit and bringing the gray from the foot upward toward the knee. That's not too bad. I also like the addition of the black in the forearms and the hips. Gives it a little bit more dominance, and you can see the underside of the wing also has the stripe for the wing, which gives it a little bit more of a classic appearance in this mode. I am quite the fan. This does work. This works out for me. Now, considering I keep the arms bent most of the time, yeah, the long armness of the mold doesn't really quite get to me. So that all works out. For articulation, you saw we rotated the head all the way around, so no surprise, it still rotates. That still gives us articulation. Shoulders are universally jointed. The nice thing is the wings do have some fold away, so you can actually get some extra range out of the arms if you need be. What I don't like about them is they're on this hinge that doesn't really hold in anywhere. It feels like it should. It feels like there should be a spot where it all kind of pegs together and holds in, but it doesn't quite. Yeah, yeah, I've tried it. There's no way for it to really socket into the shoulder, into the chest like it feels like it should. Bicep rotates around. The elbow is 180 thanks to transformation, and the wrists fully swivel around and rotate. They do get blocked, but you still have like a ton of rotation in there. It's just as much as you would need. Hips also universally jointed. No ball joints in this thing. It's pretty much all hinges and mushroom pegs. Thigh swivel, knee bend 90 degree, and you get an ankle tilt to make sure his poses are nice and stable. So he does have a lot of good range to him. He is a nice figure overall. A few minor flaws in proportions and a little bit in the construction, but not too terribly bad. And then we still have these weapons. Now, aside from the wings, which, well, you can't really mount them here, they still do mount to the legs, though it is a little bit of a weird fit now. What you really want to use are, of course, the hands, which can actually mount up the weapon a little bit more normally. This is based on a weapon in the actual Fall of Cybertron game, so of course, being able to handhold it is a necessity. However, for a little bit more of a classic Seeker look, he does have peg holes on the underside of the forearms. So while it doesn't let you mount them the way the null... and this is why I don't like mushroom pegs. A little bit of friction the wrong way, and he loses an arm. Just really annoying. But that aside, it doesn't really let you arm mount the weapons the way a traditional Seeker would, so you can't really mount them up the way a Null Ray looks. But I don't mind the underslung look, especially when they're two of these really meaty, heavy chain guns. I feel this is a more appropriate way of holding weaponry like this. So this actually does look cooler to me. Just like twin barrel, just like how cool like an action movie star like Arnold Schwarzenegger looks when he just takes out this giant chain gun and just starts walking around with it. Now we're wielding two of them at once. That's kind of cool to me. So that works out. And of course we can just kind of like supercharge them over here, because that looks cool too. I like how much play there is in these weapons. This gives it a little bit more character and a lot more playability, which I kind of like. So that's pretty much what the toy is in a nutshell. Nice and simple, nothing really overcomplicated. A nice clean figure. Everything just kind of works out on him all the way around. He does have a few little missteps. I don't like the mushroom pegs, as we noted, and his proportions are a little bit off. But for the most part, not a bad toy. Like, I was happy to see this come out in all three of the Seeker colors, the main Seekers anyway, so you can pick and choose which one you wanted. And I'm never going to get that Cybertron Skywarp the way I want it, but at least I have this. And for now, it's good enough. No, it's not. Bring that toy back, Hasbro! I want it!